Why, hello everyone. We are here as the final summary episode of Oceania Conference 2026. Here we are again, having just completed quite a few interviews this entire time. Marissa, how are you doing? How's your voice? How's the brain?
My voice is good.
Uh-huh.
My brain, it has a mixture of feelings of excitement, a bit of inspiration, a bit of fatigue. Yep, not going to lie. But enthusiasm. And even when I was talking to my family last night, I feel very grateful for this opportunity.
It's really wonderful to be here, isn't it?
It is.
And I think there's something really special that happens when you gather together. We say that at pretty much all conferences, but they all have different kinds of themes and takeaways that you bring back to talk to the families that you work with, to the teams that you work with. And, not everyone gets to go to these conferences. And that's why we do the podcast at conferences, is to bring people in.
Mm-hmm. It's such a good way to do it. I think the fact that you can, some of the 7-minute presentations, we've been able to expand and talk to people for 20 to often 30 minutes. Some of the keynotes we've been able to speak to. And I think even if I've heard them in the actual session, to hear them say it again, it's these key take-home messages. It's really exciting.
It is, isn't it? And, whilst we haven't been able to cover every single person who had a presentation, of which there were hundreds, so it's not like we could have, the sample program that we were able to curate as part of this podcast series, I think reflects a lot of the heart behind the themes that are coming through for the conference, the why, the future directions, and that's what we're going to take through to you today. It's our thematic analysis of the entire conference. Are you ready to get going?
Let's do it.
Okay, so I think if we were to summarize this whole conference and say one sentence, I would say it would be, we found that there was advance in the field through integrated, authentic lived experience. I think that was really key, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
With early assessments, neuroplasticity-driven interventions that collaboratively shape policy, clinical pathways, and the part that I really love about this conference spoke about hopeful and growth-oriented careers.
I love that. They're all things we heard, common threads.
Right.
Nearly every presentation.
Yes.
There was an element of co-design. We had consumer input.
Yeah.
We heard people with lived experience sharing there, which actually informed a lot of the studies that were shared.
It really did.
Was the consumers, and I think that's fantastic.
It was really powerful. There's a lot to cover through. So let's go through each of those themes one by one, and maybe just elaborate them a little bit more. And hopefully that will help you to know, maybe which episodes you want to prioritize to listen to as well, and think that one through. So we came up with an acronym because
you love acronyms.
We do love a good acronym.
Yeah.
And I think the acronyms were pretty strong, and the game was pretty strong here at this conference. So we have an acronym, and we're going to call it R.E.A.C.H.
Which makes sense. I mean, we want to reach this information. This is the purpose of the podcast, the purpose of the conference. We want to reach out the information.
We do. So R stands for, sound like such nerds right now, don't we?
It's okay, everyone.
It's okay. We all
like them.
Yeah, that's right. Well, okay, R stands for research priorities and resource allocation. I think this one was a really powerful one, wasn't it? When it comes to resource allocation came through very strongly. A lot of it through assessments, through identifying key areas that were really important to research as well, and to do that collaboratively.
I think that's the thing. It was really highlighted that we don't want to work in silos, and every, different countries all working on similar projects. Yes. And then, why not come alongside each other?
Yeah.
And so I know, Rachel Burns spoke about CP360 and coming together of different global organisations and really highlighting the need for that advocacy for cerebral palsy. There was that theme of cerebral palsy kind of belonging everywhere and not having a home, and just that passion to be able to use our research, come together from a global advocacy perspective. Yeah. And we had some great presenters from John Coughlin as well.
Yes.
A father of a young adult with cerebral palsy, sharing his experiences, and now he's using that, and his son as well as part of that advocacy process.
Yeah, for the World Health Assembly and looking at that global policy. And it was really enlightening to talk about global policy, because I think when you are sort of, I guess, at the grassroots level and you're providing interventions, you're talking to families about things, the global policy can seem very distant and doesn't feel or sound like something that you could have much influence over. But he broke it down to a way that it's like, no, it's possible. You can make small steps towards that. There's a mindset shift that you can make toward that. And whilst there is a global policy that is made and that becomes international law, it doesn't get taken up by governments unless we come behind it and push it forward. And that's the voice that they're really advocating for.
Yeah. It was quite amazing to hear their passion behind that.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is obviously educating not only health professionals, but like you said, policy leaders as well about cerebral palsy and other, similar conditions, and also having consumers and people with lived experience advocating as well and part of that process.
Yeah.
And I think that's a huge thing, having people with lived experience on these boards and organisations that are driving advocacy at the World Health Organization and other global levels.
Yes.
It's how we're going to...
And it's really clear that through everything that we do, I mean, we kind of say 10, 15 years ago, involving consumers was kind of like the first steps of getting people to think about how we could have consumers involved in our research. And now it's just part of every single stream. You can't really, and it was part of this conference as well, was to say, how did you involve consumers through this and lived experience now? How did you involve that? And everyone has that element in it. And if you don't, the question is, are you researching something that is a priority? Right. And I think it was really, really interesting because, for example, Carly Luke's PhD, she sought to look at how they were going to implement early detection guidelines in remote areas of Queensland. And when they went to the consumers, they went to the Aboriginal elders, they were like, well, no, cerebral palsy isn't our priority. Actually, it's like neurodevelopmental disability is more of our priority. And they went, oh, okay. And then there was a shift. And then they had to really understand what was a culturally safe framework and went down that pathway because that's what people said they wanted.
And you're going to get more uptake then. People are going to want to walk alongside these projects if they have a part of it. And I think that's been a big thing that's come through. I feel every presentation has had people with lived experience or the communities that they're trying to outreach involved in the design process.
Yeah, that's right. And then even how people with lived experience are trying to input into, early detection and what that means when you first get your diagnosis and what resources are available for you. And parents are wanting to create resources to that time where they wish they did have something. And so that's this constant reinvestment into the field, and that hopefully just makes those pathways a lot stronger, a lot clearer, and respecting that that's a really difficult time as well. That was pretty cool.
It's very exciting.
Yeah. And the other thing that came up around research priorities and resource allocation was around just funding. And we spoke about that really briefly. And I think it's worth touching on as well as, here you're in a space where funding is really important to drive more research. But research funding is really hard to come by. And it's just worth acknowledging and just putting out there so that we all sort of know and understand that, we're all actually just competing against each other unless we come together because we're all going after grants that are really hard to come by. And if we're all going in for them with different angles for it, we're just going to be competing against each other and a group's not going to be able to get it. So the need for collaboration is even stronger.
It's huge. And I think this is a real strength of a conference like this. You can meet online, and meeting online is an amazing tool. But I think when you come together like this and you get to talk and meet other people with like-minded visions, and this is where we can use better use of funding.
I love that. That's really great. Okay, so that's R, research priorities and resource allocation. The next one for E, no surprises there, is early detection and experiences and intervention. Ooh, there was a massive area.
So many things around this, so many things. Where do I start? I feel like, we're improving not only obviously the diagnosis of cerebral palsy is happening earlier now. We had Kathy Morgan speaking as well, but just even about the accuracy of the clinical markers that we have to not only predict cerebral palsy, but also the severity of cerebral palsy and talking about the HINE. We spoke about the HINE with Monica Tui as well, about looking at it, potentially being able to assist in diagnosing unilateral cerebral palsy with that asymmetry score.
Yeah, that's right.
And then you've got the team from Chicago, Colleen and Teresa, looking at baby Oscar and looking at assessing selective motor control in those first 3 months as well, which I didn't even know we looked at that age.
Wasn't that incredible?
It is possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just looking at, that whole shift when we're looking at early detection, it has been implemented around the world. Like that paper was, in terms of the guidelines, it was only published 2017, 2019 when they all got together. And then that just spread so quickly around the world. It's been taken up in many, many countries and in the low resource settings as well, thanks to the great work of so many great researchers who are so dedicated to the field. And it was just such a shining example of what implementation actually looks like. Because I think we've all heard that, it takes 17 years to implement research into practice. And my goodness, that's a long time. And it's a whole generation, as we talked about. But early detection, in terms of how that's been implemented, has happened in far less of a time. And even when you're looking at the strategies to reduce the incidence of cerebral palsy and even GMS level 4 and 5, that has reduced through the epidemiology studies that have been reported by Haley and Chrissy. Those things have been put in place and we're seeing the results of it now.
It's incredible. And I think, and what they're highlighting, I know the study with Michelle Jackman, the qualitative study when they interviewed parents, who had children who were at, I just want to make sure I get it right, high risk of cerebral palsy from the NICU, and they were going to co-design a video resource. And they spoke to parents and they all spoke about wanting to know the answers. Yeah. And I think now we have the tools, obviously, and we have for a little while, but now we have even more confidence to not only highly predict cerebral palsy, but potentially, look at severity as well. And
the measures are still a little bit on the blunt side, as they keep saying, and they're trying to look closer into the precision, but that's starting, and there's new research being done right now. Kathy Morgan talked about aiming for 1,000 babies to traject the natural history over the course of the next few years. So it's coming, isn't it? And I think it's going to be here sooner than we realise. And hopefully from there, we'll have more information about what's going to guide our intervention. Because ultimately, you want early detection so you can intervene in a more precise way much, much earlier.
Absolutely.
Right.
And there were also presentations. That's the great thing. There was amazing input around, the early detection and looking at that in something that's feasible and also lower and middle income countries.
Yes.
There was looking at, early intervention studies as well, but then also resources for parents in these early years. And I really loved chatting with Michelle Jackman about when they, came together, create a video by families to share with health professionals to give them what they thought would help when they're giving people, diagnosis and input. And I think to hear that from parents that have been through this experience and some of the key points that came out of that is something that all clinicians, I think, we can take.
Yeah.
One of the big points was, I think, the where and when you have conversations and certain conversations. And I think, sometimes we're on deadlines, we're on timelines, but for families, when they're hearing this big news, giving them notice and
it needs time,
allowing them to prepare.
It really does.
Yeah.
And I think from there as well is always moving really crucially into intervention as well. I think you can identify, but then parents want an action plan and they want to know what is possible. So we had some lovely interviews and presentations about intervention. One from our very own team, Sophia Gribben, talking about Kindy Moves. Kindy Moves is one of the projects that we're part of back at Healthy Strides, and it's really to develop a program for children classified within GMS level 3, 4 and 5 to access good early intervention, mobility-based, social connection, cognitive functioning. Stacey Ducey spoke about that a lot, didn't she? It's not just about the motor, it's about the cognition. And, when you're doing these interventions, you don't just get motor outcomes, you also get a lot of cognitive benefits too, because being upright, on-time mobility, it's really important. But, families also really enjoy these experiences too because it's how they connect. And that's really important. We're looking at this holistically. It's not just about the child. They have an environment around them and these interventions can support them.
Absolutely. And I think that's another big thing that came across in a number of the early intervention presentations was around parent and caregiver support, particularly in those early years. We need to make sure, and that includes, mental health support and even just guidance and giving them hope in our conversations.
Fiona Russo's CPCAS.
Oh, that was fantastic.
The Village, and looking for that and the pathways from, the early seeking information to advocacy, that whole pathway was really lovely. And then I also love that we didn't just talk just about motor gains as well. It was looking at vision. Love the chat that I had with Alison Nafar and with Roz Boyd as well. When it comes to vision, we can be incorporating such great strategies very early on as part of our motor strategies, when we're teaching about those interactions between mum and bub, and as we're presenting them with toys and play when they're upright, you can be so intentional about what you do. And the principles of neuroplasticity apply just as much to vision as well as our motor skills. And that's just a really good reminder. I think we inherently know that, and the evidence is really developing there. But we can do a lot of those things too, because a lot of the times you're not going to have the resources to have someone that just specializes in vision, but you can be thinking about these strategies alongside.
And some of them, it's not hard to implement some of them. So it's simple ideas that we can incorporate into our interventions.
Yeah. And I think that provides a lot of hope. And I love that conversation with Alison in the sense that, there is a lot of hope that if you can intervene really early, you can maximize vision by giving them the experiences and helping them to understand what they're seeing, the processing. But it doesn't just sit there, of course. When you're looking at vision, as Nafar spoke about, you need to look at that from a school-age perspective too, because sometimes it does slip through and you don't identify it till a bit later. So it was really wonderful to actually hear about interventions as well. Okay. Next one, A, assessments. Assessments is another category that I think is really interesting because they have so much to do to shape services and experiences. And I love the conversation we had with Samantha King, our honours student, now OT at Healthy Strides, and Sarah Reedman about the use of activity limitation tests for frame running. Assessments like this, and alongside, let's talk about EMDT as well, looking at cognitive fatigue and identifying what that might look like. If you don't assess, you're not going to know the outcome of what you can therefore do, right?
Exactly. Assessing is not only to look at outcomes so we can see the effectiveness of our intervention, but it's also to know how to guide our intervention.
Yeah.
And I think, whether it's looking at someone's vision or looking at their cognitive fatigue or looking at their pain or
how they can participate in Paralympics potentially, right?
Absolutely.
One of those opportunities. And pain was a big one for Meredith Smith and Nadine Smith's PhD platforms. They are really important things because you can't expect participation and inclusion if there's these underlying issues that are really influencing them, and they're multifaceted and they're all feeding into each other in terms of how someone might function.
Yeah. And I think that's what Ian Jatir was speaking about as well, is, cognitive fatigue aligns with pain, and then limited physical activity, and then we can have elements of depression and, mental health issues. So it's really important that we're asking these questions. What do their days look like? How are they feeling? Is it cognitive fatigue? Is it physical fatigue? Is there elements of pain that are driving some of that? I think to make us, be better clinicians, we have to listen.
Yeah. And step back, take a look and look at the breadth of assessments that are available. And there's more and more assessments that are available that are quite easy to use, whether they're questionnaires, but they can be so crucial. And as we're talking to them, I was thinking already of, the children, the young people that we could be doing this with in our practice already. And then we did just talk about cerebral palsy. I think it's really important that we looked at other childhood onset disorders, disabilities as well, such as spina bifida, educational outcomes. That was really interesting. And that was done through the Swedish register. But how important is it to know, the presence of hydrocephalus and how that influences school outcomes, and then thinking about the structures you can put in place for those children, because that's going to be something that will be quite challenging for them. So scaffold early, support early, right?
I think it's huge. And if we're aware of these things, and sometimes I guess we might not think, obviously I'm not a physician, but in terms of some of these conditions that I guess we're used to hearing because it goes alongside, for example, spina bifida.
Yeah.
But it's something that if we can look at it, it's going to impact them in the school years, and we can put things in early.
Absolutely. And then we spoke about I loved this one. Serial casting in idiopathic toe walking and children with autism spectrum disorder. You know, we see this clinically, we're not sure what to do sometimes, but how reassuring that you can do a good assessment, look at gait analysis, range of motion. They're still really important to ensure that we have good functioning. And we spoke to Anne about using, on the R.E.A.C.H Academy, we've got 2D gait visualization, pose estimation, where you can have this at your fingertips to do really good assessment. And she was really excited about that as well, because, you know, these are just tools that we can use in our clinic. And to enhance that as well, Timothy Scott, 3D visualization clinic, like we're looking at other ways we can assess to make it more real, to understand if our interventions are actually making a difference.
I loved that. I mean, yeah, I mean, both of them. I think, you know, Timothy Scott speaking about, you know, pre and post Botox or pre and post interventions, you know, hearing feedback that, yeah, I think it's doing better, but really that's actually, let's get a little bit more information.
Better than that.
Especially with, you know, when, you know, majority of the population will have a smartphone that they can do some recordings on. We can actually clinically look at objective measures of whether, you know, botulinum toxin or other interventions to see, you know, has it given them more range to help with their swimming, running, whatever it might be. And Anne McNee, one thing that came out of that, obviously the importance of assessments. And I think assessments to then drive policy change. You know, you might implement more serial casting. She spoke about more in a time when they could do less surgery from a COVID perspective in the UK.
That's a good point. How that feeds into resource allocation again, right?
Absolutely. Because if you don't have good outcomes, how are you ever going to advocate on a policy level, which was one thing that, again, was running through this conference. But also just the fact that they weren't really using serial casting with kids with ASD, I think, as much because of a perceived lack of tolerance. And obviously they've done this and they've actually tolerated the serial casting really well.
So really encourage people to have a listen to that episode, hey, because it was really interesting how it just, you know, changed perceptions of what things might look like. And that was really cool. I think that leads really nicely into the next one, which is C, which I would say is curiosity in careers. I thought that we heard of a lot of people who were just curious about something, followed their nose, and they looked for the next step. And that is where good science comes from, but it's also where careers can develop. And I think when you look back at what it is that we do, our role, there is so much opportunity to grow and expand yourself, you know, that real growth mindset. I really think that this conference and people we spoke to really highlighted that. Like, how fascinating was it speaking to Jolene Brandenburg, right? There she was doing basic science research on spa mice. And I thought when I first met her that was like she was a lab scientist. But she's a doctor, rehab medicine, and was just asking questions and found herself looking at mice. And I thought, how fascinating is that, to kind of be so curious about something that you go down that path? Even Timothy Scott, he started as an engineer, and through pathways, he found a passion, and he's a physician. And now he's looking at this 3D visualization.
So he's implementing all his specialties.
So wonderful. Sarah McIntyre, Dayna Rederhoff-Oration. And where she started, right? She wasn't sure. Tennis.
So she's a tennis coach,
wasn't she? Coach. Didn't get her coaching accreditation. Then decides to go to do occupational therapy. And then from there becomes an epidemiologist. But the best thing about everyone that we spoke to about that was there was no firm plan. And I think that's so okay, because I think sometimes, you know, when you come out of university and you want to think about where you want to be in your career, and I love thinking about where your goals might be, because you do need to set goals. And we'll talk about that in a little bit with regards to hope. But sometimes you think it's really rigid, but you need to set a goal to think about where you might go, but there needs to be enough flexibility so that you can be agile and you can be curious and be challenged. And if you can do that, then working in a co-designed method, because that's the other part, another C word, is that if you're going to co-design, you might have people say things completely opposite to what you think. And you need to be kind of okay
change
with
your course,
right?
Yep.
And I thought that was something that came through really strongly. And I really love that.
Me too. I loved hearing people's different stories about where they come from and how they've ended up to where they are today. And, you know, the wonderful talk we had from Dr. Lynn McKinley about hope and burnout. And the biggest part about hope was having these common goals and pathways, but with like-minded people. And I think that's the beauty in all the stories we heard. Yes. Even, you know, they've come alongside these like-minded people and their journeys have changed to somewhere where they probably never thought they would be. But it's about being open. But also, walking alongside these people with a similar mindset in that, you know, we're not going to be rigid. We're going to listen to consumers. We're going to meet people that inspire us. And go for it.
And that is the final H. That is hope.
It
is.
Preempted
it, Marissa.
Yeah, well done. I didn't even read the H yet.
H is hope. So, you know, it's about that cognitive strategy. And I really love that applies to us as clinicians, you know, and in terms of how hope is a strategy against burnout. And burnout isn't just an on-off switch. You know, you can identify that when you've got a bit more skepticism and cynicism, and you have less compassionate empathy as well. And you can identify those things. But if you have a cognitive strategy, you can develop an action plan that applies to all of us. You know, it applies to all of us when we think about our careers. You know, we've invested so much into what it is that we do, keeping it fresh and light, but also with a firm hope for the future. That's really important, isn't it? And that speaks to that growth mindset once again. But it's that curiosity that builds into that hope too. It's being able to ask those questions and develop that action pathway.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And something that I'd really encourage everyone to think about as well is, you know, in a place like this, you realize how important mentors are. And making sure you do have one, and making sure you do have a good supervisory plan, that someone is going to support you. And what are you going to invest into that space as well? It's a two-way street, isn't it? And I love that at this conference, we didn't just talk about, you know, what are we doing in our professional life in terms of the clinical or the research work we're doing. It is about our growth as humans, as professionals, and how we can ensure that is healthy, because that's not spoken about enough, but it's so integral.
I agree. And that's, I think, even from the conference dinner last night when we got to speak again to other people that I may have not met before, or it was inspiring and it was encouraging to hear their story. And even that brings about hope, because you realise there and it's an excitement, because you've got a number of amazing people all with a similar passion and vision coming together. And so how much more can we achieve if we collaborate and come together? Again, that's the big thing about hope, like-minded people, similar pathways.
Making sure you've got a network around you. And that is full circle. See what I did there? Goes all the way back to R when it comes to research priorities and influencing policy. And that's exactly what John Coughlin spoke about, is that we actually need to make sure that comes full circle around, and that we are developing this action plan so we can actually make a difference in this field. And there you go.
That's well done. Good acronym.
It's a good acronym.
But not to take away, a truly amazing conference. And it's really exciting. And it's something that already, you know, we can be implementing from next week in our sessions.
Oh, I can't wait. I mean, I'm going to feel a little bit tired going back into work on Monday, but hopefully really reinvigorated about everything that we're going to be doing. And so I hope you've all really enjoyed this conference series. We've just had so much fun. I do need to put a little note there. At the dinner last night, a lot of people were really excited to meet Ed. And he's standing behind the camera, and he has been working so hard through this entire conference to get the episodes out. He hasn't had the opportunity to ask a question, which is why his voice is at the beginning, just to make sure that the Ed flavour is still there. But people wanted to meet Ed. They told me they look forward to his question above all else. That was interesting. We'll have to have chats about that. But they were really insightful. They think that he's knowing more and more now in the area, but they look forward to his question. And I think there were a few selfies that were taken with Ed. No one's asked me for a selfie, but they've asked one with Ed.
It's the mysterious and the voice. People want to know who this mystery man is. Yeah.
I heard a lot of is Ed here? I'm like, yes, he is here. I'm here, but so is Ed. And I think someone wants to get an autograph with him as well. So look, we'll try to take photos of that and see if his face goes bright beetroot red, because I'm sure it will, because as the man behind the camera, he doesn't really want a lot of attention.
He's hating this right now.
He is. He's absolutely hating it. And that's why I'm lingering on for a little bit longer. So thank you to everyone who's also come up to us and encouraged us and told us about what they love about the podcast. You know, we do this because we love it and because people listen. thousands of you listen, so thank you so much. I love hearing about how people listen to us as well. Meredith, this is a shout out to you. You always tell me how on Monday mornings you listen to our podcast on your way into work, and at stand-up meeting you tell everyone about the latest research. That's so cool. And it's so many stories like that of people just enjoying the content. So thank you so much. If you've got any suggestions, let us know. And also remember, we're here to also just remind everyone that we've got our academy. The academy is something that you all wanted, researchworks.academy. It's completely free. We have made a resource that I believe that you'll use it within your clinical practice all the time. We're linking on all clinical practice guidelines, outcome measures, goal attainment scale.
The classification tools, the pathways.
Tools, yes, so that you've got that support, the gait analysis, the report templates, which we use a lot of as well. And the courses are on its way. We've got some free courses already available there, so you can really put all this into practice. But we've also got more courses on its way as well. And I'm looking forward to doing them too. Keep a lookout for that. We'll keep you updated on it, but remember to sign up for it so you can see all the information that's already there and start using that into your practice. And we'll keep updating that for you as well. So it's a good resource.
I love it. I'm using it more and more.
Great. Well, I'm going to hopefully go to the market soon and buy some honey. That's a bit of a thing around here.
You have to eat it here though.
I can't bring it back into WA, can I?
No.
Can I eat a whole jar of honey in a day?
Buy some nice bread.
That would be lovely. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And we'll talk to you all again really soon in our normal weekly episodes. Bye, everyone.
Bye.